Welcome to JMedia 101. Today we're joined by Ronica Hairston. She's joining us as the founder of Dyslexia is Not a Bad Word. How are you today?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's great to have you.
And thank you so much for having me. I love that you set up this platform for us to come on here and be able to share our path of entrepreneurship.
Absolutely. Yeah, the name really struck out to me. So many people have heard of dyslexia, but not many people actually know what it is. So can you let us know what is dyslexia?
Sure. So, oftentimes people will say dyslexia is a language-based disability. I
Mhm.
often like to just use the word that it's a learning difference.
Right.
I think now the word disability, it shouldn't be looked at as a bad word, but a lot
Hmm.
of people hate when you use that word. So it
Yes.
depends on the person, but I feel like saying that it's a learning difference helps a lot of people out. Some people think that dyslexia is just something where people deal with letters reversing or not being able to read at all. And
Hmm.
some of that is part of dyslexia. Actually, both of those things are part of dyslexia, but there's so much more. So with dyslexia, oftentimes people who even are looking at letters, it's not so much that the letters reverse, but sometimes the letters completely disappear. Sometimes they are shadowed in. Sometimes they move around on the page. And so it's a lot of work as a dyslexic person, sometimes with reading or even doing math problems and things like that. It does affect sometimes your writing, not just your ability of reading, but your writing and most definitely your processing. So I
Okay.
often tell people when they say, well, my student's struggling with math, and I say, well, a lot of times, there's story problems in math and we have to process things. So, like if a student is in third or fourth grade and you start getting those story problems, it might not even be just an issue as far as how to read them, but processing what you need to do.
Okay.
So many things fall under dyslexia, but the easy part of saying it is it's a different way of learning. It has nothing to do with a lack of intelligence. There are tons of highly successful, very intelligent dyslexic people, but it's just a different way of learning and a different way of processing things.
And that was actually my next question. You brought it up. I was doing research and it was saying that dyslexia has absolutely nothing to do with intellect. And in fact, most people with dyslexia are average or above average. So, how does that misconception hurt people with dyslexia that, is intellect based, that you may have inferior intellect?
So I think one thing is when I meet a lot of parents who are absolutely terrified that their student has been diagnosed with dyslexia because they automatically decide that their student is not going to be able to read, their
Okay.
student is constantly going to be behind. And so when you think of it like that, your student can't help but become a little self-conscious and maybe their self-esteem is hurt thinking that I'm a disappointment, to my family, and there's going to be things I can't do. So I'm always telling parents and just people with, when we talk about dyslexia, that 40% of our most successful entrepreneurs in the world are dyslexic.
Oh, wow. Is that
Um,
high? 40%?
40%. So
Wow.
20% really of our population is dyslexic.
Okay, 20.
It's one in five people.
Oh,
Just
wow.
like the school MIT, people talk about MIT and engineering, they call that the school of dyslexics because what
I did
people
not know
sometimes
that.
don't, yeah, people don't
Hmm.
always realize that, sometimes where someone might think that you have this weakness, you have such a great strength. So dyslexia has nothing to do with being flawed or having a weakness. It's just a different type of strength, but you have to know how do we strengthen that part of a dyslexic person. Number one, you cannot put them down and tell them
Right.
that okay, this is going to be a life full of can'ts,
Mm.
because they definitely can. So it's just getting with the right materials and the right people behind you to help you with your dyslexic student, or a lot of adults who are just now finding out they are dyslexic. Um, it just kind of you have to get in the right space and with the right people who actually understand that it's just a different way of processing information. But you are more than ready and capable to do anything you want to do.
And so I loved how you see it more as a strength instead of a weakness. It's just a difference. It's not anything that's inferior or anything like that. And so
Oh
you
no.
kind of touched on it, but what are some of the biggest myths surrounding dyslexia?
Um, Intelligence is definitely number one. I
Hmm.
think another myth would be, I mean, because I hear people all the time, they'll say these comments like, "Oh, I'm just a little bit dyslexic," when they say something incorrectly.
Right.
So they really do think that they think that it's a simple thing of, oh, it's just that the letters switch around and it's okay. Um, I do think one thing that people don't understand is that dyslexia can be very painful. And I mean that in the way of when people think that, oh, dyslexia isn't really a big deal, even though they don't really know what it is. But when you're a student in school, so you're in second or third grade, and the teacher starts calling on you to read or maybe do math at the board, that can be very scary if you
Especially in
don't
front of the
know
class.
in front of the class. And so I've met a lot of people who when you're in school and they think and in school they can't diagnose dyslexia as far as if you go to your school for help,
Oh,
but
okay.
they'll give you some extra time, different things, so we can talk about that later. I'm sure you can ask me about that later.
Yeah,
I
I
hate to jump
definitely have
ahead, I'm
questions
sorry.
about that.
But yeah, but back, I'm sorry, back to the myths. Let me try to stay on, it just takes me into so many other things. But I think the biggest myth is just that it's just something where people see things reversed. And like I
Hmm.
said earlier, it's just so much more. It's the eyesight, it's the processing, it's writing, it's the time that it takes to do something. So something that might take you 15 seconds to read could take them 2 or 3 minutes to read.
Okay.
So I think it's that whole thing of, you can get past it. It's just this little thing, just hurry up and go. It doesn't work like that.
It's not that easy.
Mm-mm.
And also, when I was doing a little bit of research, I noticed that dyslexia is it isn't one of those things that looks similar in everybody. It takes on all these differences, and so in a school setting, that could make it like harder to diagnose. Correct, since it could look so different from person to person.
Yeah, because they can definitely be more severe. Like with my two kids that I like to say are thriving dyslexic people.
Hmm.
My daughter's path was completely different from my son's. My
Okay.
son's wasn't as severe
Hmm.
as hers, but still just I've learned so much also with working with both of them. They're 14 years apart, so my journey
Oh,
with both of them in school was completely different.
okay.
Um, but it's not the same, which is why in a lot of our school systems, when people get individualized education plans, and the school might tell you, oh, okay, well, your child is dealing with some reading issues, and we're going to give them 45 minutes extra time, every day to get this extra help. And they pull them out of these classes that it might be gym or it might be art, but either way, they're missing those classes. And their friends start to realize that they're missing those classes.
Okay.
But the thing about it is, it's kind of like when we talk about equality and equity, right? So equality means that if me and you tomorrow are in the same classroom and we have the same teacher and the same book, and I'm excelling and you're falling behind, and they'll say, well, but they have the same book and the same teacher. We don't know why she's not doing as well as Ronica's
Exactly.
doing. The equity in all these things is if they say, Ronica, you're excelling and we're going to keep you here. We're going to put you up to the next class. And tomorrow we got to figure out why you're falling behind. So we're going to figure out the type of help you need, not just say to you, tomorrow you're going to go outside and you're going to work for an extra 45 minutes and come back in, and we hope that's going to help you. Because what they in fact do is make you go outside for 45 minutes and become much more frustrated because now you're still doing the same work they had you doing in class, but now you're isolated. It's one on one, but they're still not figuring out, well, why aren't you getting it? So I think a lot of people with dyslexia deal with that because I couldn't read in class, and now I'm outside in the hallway with the teacher and I'm still not reading, and
You're
I'm
still
growing more and more
struggling,
frustrated.
just in a
Right.
different
So, like in the
atmosphere.
case of somebody with dyslexia, you don't want to do repetition and the same sight words over and over. You got to teach a kid how to decode words, because they deal with understanding how that sounds when they look at something. the word dyslexia, like dividing that word up to read it. So if I'm just taking you outside the classroom saying, okay, you didn't read this in class, well, so now we're going to go over it and over it and over it, that's not going to help them. Because one thing you'll find with dyslexic people is they could read that one time all the way through and it's fine. And then the next time they could read it and it might take them 5 or 10 minutes because of how their brain is processing. So we really have to look at what a dyslexic student may need, actually need, versus what we decide we're going to give them. So, school systems now are doing a lot more with, I think, um, acknowledging dyslexia, that it exists, but as far as how to help a student with dyslexia, we need a lot more work with that.
And so, what are some of the best tools you've noticed that you can give students to help them along in their journey?
Yeah. So, pretty soon, that's going to come later this year. I'll have some products out there for people. But
Okay.
one of the things we want to do when you have a student is, number one, you need to sit down and talk with your student about what works for them and what
Mhm.
doesn't. Because a lot of times we always talk to kids about what's not working, and
Right.
sometimes those conversations can be upsetting. So you want
Mhm.
to always encourage them, like, okay, well, what's not working and what is working? There are a lot of different tools now. They have some that can read pages for students. Um, there's some different workbooks out there that are going to deal with, what is a long E? What is a short E? So when we're talking about the word tree, and how does that word tree sound when it comes out of our body? How does our mouth form when we say the word tree? They need those types of exercises to actually understand how that E is supposed to sound. Um, versus when you say something like 10, which is
Mhm.
a short E, right? So things like that. Fidget spinners. I actually have a fidget spinner here on my table. So things like this that help some students when they're doing work that they can do, that it's quiet, and it helps them just to think and process and get things like that done. So even things like this. Pencil grippers for some students who are having trouble writing, a pencil gripper may help. Or maybe you do some things where you get a workbook that deals with drawing lines back and forth or up and down. Those things help them, and it's also relaxing to do. One of the things that I'm doing with my workbooks is I've written out some affirmations and some
Mhm.
dictations. Dictations are going to be great because I want parents or whomever, if it's their teacher or guardian, to be involved with reading something to them and just letting them write it out. The affirmations are great because we want to pour back into them, right? Because now they're feeling maybe discouraged, or they kind of don't know. So they're able to write things out. Some of the affirmations are, I can do hard things. I was born to shine. Dyslexia doesn't stop me. Dyslexia is a different type of strength. Things like that, that when they're writing these things, they can also read them and it can soak in. It can help them build from there. Another great thing I suggest to parents or guardians, whomever's taking care of that child, is do not say to your student things like, okay, let's just get one page done, or
Oh,
you got to complete 2 pages and then I'm going to let you have a break, or I'm going to give you some reward. Rewards are great, but with somebody with dyslexia, I need people to understand that their minds are working very hard. And
okay.
so, like I said, what might be easy for us to read, it might not be for them. So it's taken them a while to read it and to process it. So I suggest to parents, get a timer, and get a timer that your student can see. So if you, instead of saying we got to finish this whole page, say we're going to work for 15 minutes and
Okay.
we're going to get as far as you get, and we're going to
Mhm.
celebrate where you get to,
I
so
love that.
that is helping them not feel
Mhm.
so anxious and like
Yeah.
crazy about, oh my God, I have to finish it.
Takes
That's
the
a lot of
pressure
stress.
off. Mhm.
Yeah, that's a lot of stress. So giving them time to do something, but letting them see that timer, so then they know, oh, I got 5 minutes left. And all I got to do is just keep trying and understand that, it's like you said, it's different for everyone. So it might take them 30 minutes to get through that page, but celebrate them when they get through that 30 minutes on that page.
And so you've dealt with dyslexia as a parent and also as an educator. You've been in the education system for a while. So, what are some of the biggest challenges you've encountered from an educational perspective?
Well, actually, so I work in a school. I'm not actually well, I guess I'm kind of an educator now, right? I kind of fell into
Right.
that. But as far as my training, I'm not an educator.
Okay.
I work for a healthcare agency. Actually, I've been working for them for 25 years, but my job houses me in a school. So I've been
Mhm.
able to get this group of people, this team of people who are educators, and being around students all day myself, I'm just able to kind of see what it is that happens in classrooms and how students deal with that. And then for me myself, I was never diagnosed with dyslexia, but I definitely can tell you from doing this with my children that I'm pretty sure I'm dyslexic.
Right.
I just think, at the time when I was in school and reading was really hard for me in third and fourth grade, and my mother, who just reads all the time, and she has the same story as me though, with going to the schools and the schools say, "Oh no, your student is fine. There's
Mhm.
nothing wrong," and she just knew something, so she got me tutors and things like that on her own. Um, with my kids, it was that same thing of talking to the school and saying, my kid is just not clicking. It's not, something's wrong, and they tell me all the time, "Oh, your student has such great vocabulary," and so with my son, I actually ended up taking him when he was in ninth grade. I took him to the doctor and actually got him diagnosed.
Okay.
And then we were able to get some accommodations for him. With my daughter, we knew a lot sooner, which was third grade. And she actually goes to a school now that is built for students with dyslexia.
Okay.
So, yeah, and it's been life changing. I would say probably after a month and a half of her being there, everything was completely different.
Oh wow.
So, I've learned a lot along the way on this path with dyslexia. And I think one thing parents have to understand is you have to also talk to your student about what's going on at school, because I think sometimes the teacher calls us and they tell us, what our kid is doing. And sometimes we don't exactly go and talk to our kid. We want to fix it really quickly. You got to talk to your student to see what's going on. And the parts of this new um, job I'm going into, this entrepreneurship journey with dyslexia is not a bad word, is I hear so many sad stories from both students and parents. And I've had a lot of parents say to me like they feel so bad because they've said things to their kids like, "Stop acting stupid, stop being lazy," and so I try to tell them, okay, well, a lot of us have been there, but where do we go from here? Because dyslexia, if you have it, you have it. It's nothing to cure, it's nothing to get rid of. It's just something that we have to figure out, how do we work with this? And so I just encourage whomever is listening, if you have someone in your life who you believe might be dyslexic, that you talk to them about their struggles and see what it actually is. And it could be a number of things. But when we're talking about dyslexia specifically, it's not a one size fits all. So it's important for parents to even go outside of their school, and even if you go online and find support groups of dyslexia, you get a lot of information there from parents or educators about how they can help their student.
So you believe the best way for parents and guardians to help their kids with dyslexia is to advocate for them,
You
because it
have to
seems like the
advocate.
schools don't necessarily catch on, like there's a disconnect.
Yeah. And I think
Hmm.
sometimes, I don't want to get political with things, but I think sometimes, students are sometimes a dollar sign too for your school. I
Hmm.
don't think they necessarily want your kid to leave their school, and they
Right.
don't necessarily want to tell you that they don't know how to help your student. And sometimes you'll hear them say, "We need to do due process,
Mm.
before you decide to take your kid out of here. We need to do a due process and see if the things we do are going to help." Um, I guess it just depends on how long you're willing to do that. I wasn't willing to do that with my daughter. I found this
Right.
school that could help her. And, the sad part about it is the school is not free, which I'm like, it's almost like, wait a minute. So my kid has dyslexia. Now I have to pay thousands of dollars for her to go to school. I don't think that's fair. And some people have sued their school districts for that. And some people, I know somebody right now who's been in court over a year now, but that's a lot of money and a lot of time. And I just wasn't willing to do that. I wanted my daughter to get what she needed right now, and so that was my choice. But I definitely say, if you feel like something's wrong, it probably is. And if the school isn't helping you to your liking, then try to find out places that will. There are some different organizations that help with reading and writing. And I haven't really found one that wasn't, I would say, costly for
Okay.
dyslexia.
Mhm.
That's one of the things I'm trying to do with the products that I'm going to have coming out is have a price point for parents to be able to get something that's helpful and affordable. But yeah, you have to advocate because your student is brilliant. But I always tell people that the system I grew up in never recognized my brilliance. And I think it's that same way for a lot of our kids in the school system right now. You hear people talk about the school to prison pipeline all the time. And 85% of incarcerated youth are functionally illiterate. So they're constantly going to go in and out because they constantly don't have what they need. 20% of high school graduates cannot read. The funny thing about that is
Unbelievable.
20% of all students have dyslexia. So that's not a
Mm.
coincidence. That is
Mm-mm.
a problem that is not being addressed. And so when we think about our students who are going to juvenile detention centers at 11 and 12 and 13 and 14, it just keeps going. So, we have to attack this at all angles, not just in our schools, but in our juvenile detention centers as well. Because otherwise, we just have a lot of people floating around out here and they're unable to do things. And it's not because they're not capable, but they just never got what they needed.
So, because of all you've seen, all you've been through, you started, dyslexia is not a bad word. The name alone is telling. I remember when we spoke on the phone previously, you said that people like to shy away from the word dyslexia. I was a little bit shocked about that. Why is that? Like, why is dyslexia such a scary word?
Well, I think for a lot of people, especially when I'm speaking to people of color, people
Mm-hmm.
who are in communities that are underserved, overlooked, marginalized communities, right? I think a lot of times in our education system, we've been labeled with a lot of things that had nothing
Mm-hmm.
to do with us, right?
Right.
And we've also gone misdiagnosed and undiagnosed. So
Mm-hmm.
I think for a lot of people, if you say to them, oh, your student might have dyslexia, and it's like, don't label my kid. And so I get it. And I tell myself, wait a minute, because this label, if we're going to call it a label, isn't a bad one. Because once you know what it is, then we can go from there. But if you don't want to take on knowing if they're dyslexic or anything, then that can be a problem for them throughout their life. Because like I said, dyslexia doesn't go away. It's just it is what it is. And I've heard a lot of parents also tell me like, well, everybody in my family has an issue with reading. We don't read well. And I tell them, well, dyslexia runs in families.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you say, well, my grandfather couldn't read and I couldn't read and my dad couldn't read, well, it could be possible maybe you guys had dyslexia.
Yeah.
And maybe if you
Genetic.
got those right tools, that would have changed a lot of things from your life because then I think some people like that accept that, oh, I'm just not going to be able to do that because my family never did and we can't. And it's like, no, we don't know that yet. Let's figure it out. So I named it that because I get that so much. Or people say, if I say, oh, well, my daughter's dyslexic, they say, oh, no. And I'm like, no, it's not, I don't know. There's tons of people. I'm like, wait a minute. Because when we start talking about people, I mean, Steven Spielberg, Whoopi Goldberg, Richard Branson, who is, look at he's amazing things that he has done in the business world, right? Um, a lot of the people, like I had somebody who was telling me that they like the show Shark Tank. I said, well, did you know that they have multiple sharks on that show that are dyslexic? Damon John, Kevin O'Leary. These people are, I'm like, and they're successful people.
Highly successful.
Yeah, highly successful. And so, and I think, and I tell people also, the dyslexic brain is also, a lot of people with dyslexia are very creative. So, we have actresses and actors and artists and things like that. It's just, they just think in a different way and it comes out in a different way. So, It's not a bad thing at all. Not a bad thing.
Not at all. And so, when did you found dyslexia is not a bad word?
Actually, so I'm still very new. I'm just reaching my 1 year mark in
Okay,
June. So entrepreneurship is still very new to me. I'm
all
learning
right.
a lot as I go.
It's a
It's a
journey. It's a
completely
journey.
different world. Yes, it is. So I did that last June, and we should have products launching this summer. I have something going on with Kickstarter soon, with getting a book out, and so things are moving along. Things are moving along.
So, what made you finally decide, okay, now is the time I need to do this?
Well, actually, a friend of mine, Tasha, I think she just got tired of me talking about dyslexia. Is that a bad word? She was like, Ronica, you need to do this thing. And so she actually purchased me this class. Her son, who is a serial entrepreneur. He has
Hmm.
multiple businesses. He wrote a book and then he was doing this 3 series class and
Okay.
she bought it for me and she was like, you're going to this. So I went to that and then he connected me with some other agencies, just all right here in Seattle, Washington. And I ended up doing some accelerators, business accelerators. I've done 2 pitch competitions. And so in doing those accelerators, it helped me with understanding what it is I'm supposed to do with business. Because I
Hmm.
think as an entrepreneur, you don't know what you don't know. And that's the
Yeah.
great thing about meeting these people and coaches who can say, did you think about this? What's your marketing strategy? I'm like, I don't know. So all these people kind of came in and helped me. And so I've been able to really get a solid foundation under myself for doing business. And even the people who are in these cohorts with me, meeting different people who are entrepreneurs and trying to make their way, we've been able to help each other along the way. So it's been great. It was scary, but doable.
And what has been the feedback so far?
Everybody's just like, where's it at? Like, hurry up. So I'm like, okay, I gotta hurry up. And so now I feel like it's finally here. I don't work in the summers because I am housed in a school for my job. So this summer I plan on being out there, even if it's like at local festivals, whatever. I'll get myself a table. I bought myself 2 bookbinding machines because things get expensive. So I said, well, as I'm building money with pitching and grants, I'll make some myself also so that when I go places, I have something that I can show and that I can sell to people. So it's definitely building. It's building right now.
And so, do you want to talk about like some of the products and services you plan on offering?
Yeah, so right now it's mainly workbooks. There are 2 books I've written. One is called Turn the Volume Up. That's going to be the first book that comes out, and it has
Okay.
more of a. Both of my kids love hip hop, and I love hip
Hmm.
hop, so they got it for me right here. Um, and so our books. That's what's really nice about our books is they're very diverse, culturally diverse, and so you're going to be able to see yourself in these books.
Hmm.
A lot of the products I look at, because I went out and I purchased products. I said they do workbooks with dyslexia and all those different things. And I saw a lot of the same things. A lot of the kids that looked the same. I didn't really see kids of color. A lot of just animals
Representation.
and 1, 2, 3, ABC. And so
Hmm.
we're doing things with different things, like I said, with the hip hop, with learning how to rhyme and connecting letters and words and figuring out sounds. We're doing that. There's a board game that's being put together right now that's in the mix. And then I'm really hoping to have another arm of this, which is for consulting with parents on how to set up IEPs in their school. I think a lot of times for parents who are saying, okay, something's going on with my student and I need to help them, but their IEP is not reflecting what their student really needs. So I'd love to be able to help parents with figuring out what they need to ask of the school. If the school is saying, hey, we're here to help, we want to help, it needs to be the right help. So I'm working on that too. But pretty soon the workbooks, the coloring book, the affirmation and dictation books, those will be out.
That sounds wonderful. And so, what is your overall goal for the next year?
Um, let's see. The next year, I think the top thing for me is really to get the products out.
Hmm.
Another thing I really need to do is I have to have more of a presence on social media. Like I do have a TikTok, and I only have like a few videos on there, but they did really well. But I need to
Right.
continue to do that. I want to also start a support group that goes along with dyslexia is not a bad word, because I think the more we talk about it, the more comfortable people will become with talking about it and open to understanding that, well, maybe my student is dyslexic, or maybe it's something else, right? Because there's all types of different things, but being open to having those conversations, and also having a place where we can also go and talk about our frustrations with having dyslexia, or with our school system, or whatever it may be, but so that they just don't get exhausted, because it can be exhausting when you're trying to figure out how to help your student and you feel like you're not getting any help. That there is burnout there. So I want to be able to help relieve some of that stress and tension for people who are out here trying to find help for their students. So that's probably the 1 year goal.
What about
um,
long term?
Long term, you know what? I want to have a couple different arms to dyslexia. It's not a bad word. I'd love to have a foundation, a nonprofit. One of my bigger things is I definitely want to get into our juvenile justice system, um, because it's just about meeting kids where they're at. And I know that this might take some time to break in there, just like it will in schools too. But for some of these students who maybe feel like they're forgotten, or kind of just, this is what it is and this is what it's always been, I'd love to get in there and start working with educators within that system and the school system to help them with helping students who have a learning difference. Yeah.
And you also kind of touched on it. Sometimes people don't get diagnosed at a young age. Sometimes they're older or may not even realize it and may never get diagnosed. So, what do you say to people who are older and think that they may have dyslexia? What should be their next steps?
Yeah, well, you know what? Although my books are, I guess, targeted or aimed or focused on adolescents, they can definitely help you too, because reading is
Hmm.
reading. And I would definitely tell them to, they can even talk to their doctor or reach out if they have services like 211 and things like that. There are agencies that do help with adults learning how to read. And the number one thing I want them to know is that there is no shame in that at all. And, as hard as it may be, or putting your pride aside, whatever you need to do it for yourself, because it is life changing. I always tell people, reading is a right. It's not a privilege. All of us have the right to read. And
So
so,
true.
go and get that education, whatever it is that you need to do it, because it's going to be beneficial to you just as in your life, to know how to read. So, don't make age make you think that it's too late. It is not too late. You can definitely still get help with reading.
And what is the best advice you can give to anybody of any age who has dyslexia? What would you want them to know?
I want you to know that this isn't to um, your fault, your parents' fault. It's nothing horrible. It's nothing bad. Is it a drag a little bit? It can be, because when you're sitting in a classroom and you see people excelling around you and you're not, that can be discouraging. But once we know what it is you need and we get you what you need, you will most definitely be able to succeed. I have no doubt about that. This is something that you learn to live with and excel with, right? So it's not just that you live with it, but you excel with it. You can thrive with dyslexia. Believe you me, I challenge anybody watching this to just look up people, type in there and say, give me the smartest people in the world who have dyslexia, or the most famous people in the world, the most you put it in, I guarantee you there's going to be somebody that pops up there all the time, all the time. So don't let it discourage you. You truly are a gift. You have so many different strengths. There's nothing that you can't do. It's just knowing how your mind works to do it, how to get there.
And as a budding entrepreneur, what would you tell those female entrepreneurs out there who are ready to jump in? What's your best advice for them?
You know what? I say entrepreneurship is not for the weak. And what I mean by that is, I think a lot of times we see entrepreneurs and we say, oh man, look, she got this and this, and she's making money, and we see her here and there, but we don't often ask what their story is, how their path was, because sometimes that entrepreneur, as great as they may be today, it might have taken them 10 years and a bankruptcy to get there. So I think when you understand that this, I hope everybody can become an overnight success. I really do, but it doesn't always happen. So I think, I say, hang in there, and know that it might not be the first year or the second year. But I just feel like if it's in you versus on you, you're going to do it anyway. I have days when I'm like, oh my God, do I really want to do this? But it's a passion, right? It's in me. And so I know that there are students, there are parents, there are school districts, there are detention centers that are waiting on dyslexia is not a bad word. And that keeps me going. So I say, get yourself in accelerators, get yourself around people who are what I like to call goal diggers and not gatekeepers.
Mhm.
I've met some wonderful people that are not gatekeepers, and they've given me so, I mean, just drop just gems on me that I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So latch onto some people that you see moving in the direction you want to go. And don't be afraid to ask them questions and sit with them and go where they're going. When they say, well, I'm going over here to this business course, go to go with them, because that's how I'm learning so much, because I'm just around people who are trying to get there, who are trying to do it. And I'm just so thankful to God for that, because I have met some people who they're not telling you nothing. They're like, oh, well, you
Yeah,
can get, I got it and you go get it too. And I'm like, okay. And
that's
that's,
not helpful.
whatever, it's fine. But I'm just saying, just understand that, your dream can definitely be a reality, but
Mhm.
understand that it might take some time to get there. It might take a lot of work. Um, and you might spend a lot of money too, but time is something we don't get back, right? So I'm always
Mhm.
telling people, you got to understand that this is going to take some time, and it might not move as fast as you want it to, but keep it moving.
Mhm. Well, I just want to tell you congratulations and good luck on everything. This is a very important conversation. Like you said, dyslexia is often stigmatized, so for you to bring it to the forefront, like is very much needed, and hopefully people have learned like some useful tips and advice that can help them moving forward.
Yeah, thank you again so much for having me. This was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much.